Ladies and gentlemen, Ireland's international comedy star, loved at home and all over the world, Noel v. Ginnity.
Good evening. Well, I know we have people from all over the world here this evening. You're all very welcome. But I must tell you, I was in America for St. Patrick's Day. I stayed at the Hilton Hotel in New York. And that is a beautiful hotel. Colour television in every bedroom. Mine was a green one. I was just lying there in the bed. I got very bored. I had to send down for another Bible. Second Bible had a message in it. It says, if you're an alcoholic, ring this number. It was a liquor store in the Bronx. But it was a beautiful hotel, I must say. And the towels in the bathroom were so fluffy. I just couldn't get me case closed when I was leaving. But I come from a large Irish family here, 21 children. Now, we didn't have a babysitter, we used to have a shepherd. For the first 3 years of my life, I thought my mother was Lassie. 21 kids. You know, when we went out together on a Sunday, people used to think Mass was over. 21 kids. Can you imagine the poverty and the hand-me-down clothes situation? I had to wear my father's pants to school when I was 6 years of age. Now, my father was 6'2". As you can see by me, I was 2'6". The pants were way up over my head. If I wanted to wipe my nose, I had to open the fly. Then things got worse. I had to wear my sister's jeans to school, and that was really embarrassing, because they were a strange pair of pants. They had a big zipper down the side here. And an enormous pocket in the front. I nearly got arrested one day just looking for change. Then when my mother got some money together, she started to buy my clothes in the Army and Navy stores. Do you have Army and Navy stores where you people come from? I can tell you it was no fun going to school dressed as a Japanese general. But I did very badly at school as well. I did really badly at school. I was 3 years copying off the fella sitting in front of me before I found out I was sitting in front of a mirror. But they ask you stupid questions at school when you're a kid. Questions like, if you had $87 in one pocket and $62 in the other pocket, what would you have? I said, someone else's pants on. I remember one day they took us all down to the National Art Gallery. It's just down the road from this very hotel. And down there, there's the most magnificent painting of Adam and Eve. And the day we were there were a group of tourists looking at it. I'll never forget this. And there was a Russian gentleman there, and he made a very strong claim that Adam and Eve were actually Russians. He said, they have only one apple and they're sharing it. And there was a Frenchman there, he says, no, no, no. I think he says it twice, no, no, no. He says, Adam and Eve are French. He says, they have no clothes on, they're going to make love. And there was an Irishman there, and he discounted all the theories. He says, not at all. He says, Adam and Eve are Irish. He says, that's Adam and Eve Murphy. He says, they have no clothes, no food, and they think they're in heaven. I'd love to be down there with you enjoying this. Well, we don't think we're in heaven here. There's no work in the country, thank God. I was lying back in bed last week looking for a job. And I'm just lying there in the bed, and I said to the wife's sister, I'm just testing, you know. She says, you're not going out to look for work. I said, it's very foggy out there. Well, she says, it's clearing over the rooftops. I says, I won't be going that way. When I was here at work last night, I had a telephone call. This fella says to me, would you like to buy a burglar alarm? I says, listen, I'm too busy. I'm not interested in buying burglar alarms. He says, if I were you, I'd rethink that. He says, I'm calling from your house. Then I went out to the bar for a drink. I'm having a drink in the bar and a fight breaks out. This fella had his nose chopped off. But I saved his life. I stuck it back on. And I ran all the way to the hospital with him on my shoulder. And it was pouring down with rain. When I got to the hospital, he was dead. He drowned. I put his nose on upside down. You couldn't believe that nonsense, could you? Couldn't be true. But I must tell you this now. See, most people, especially Americans, always come to Ireland looking for their ancestry. Well, now, I have to tell you this. My great-great-grandfather, he actually died in America. He was killed at Custer's last stand. Now, he wasn't at the battle. He just went over to complain about the noise. And you may not know this either, that General Custer's last Indian scout was an Irishman. He was an Irish Indian called Murphy. He was from the tribe of the Sioux. They used to call him Sioux Murphy. Made all his own dresses. And the standing in the 4th, could have been the 5th or the 6th, but I think it was the 4th. That day at that last great battle, and the general says to Sioux, Sioux says he, are there Indians out there? And Sioux said to the general, hold on, sir. So he's down to the ground with his ear to the ground. He says, yes, sir. The general says to Sioux, Sioux says he, how many? Sioux says to the general, hold on, sir. Down with his ear to the ground again, he says, there's 657. The general says to Sioux, Sioux, are they on horseback or on foot? Sioux said to the general, hold on, sir. He said, there's 940 of them on horsebacks and 37 of them on foot. The general said to Sioux, Sioux says he had the arms. Sioux said to the general, hold on, sir. He said they have 15 Gatling guns, 16 machine guns, 84 hand grenades, 3 pink bows in the hair and 6 arrows. But the general says, Sioux Murphy, that's extraordinary intelligence gathering. He says, how do you know that? How do you know all this? He says, sure, I can see out under the door. I don't know. I was coming into work here this evening. It's funny the things you see. I was coming in here to the hotel this evening, and there's a little boy outside the door. He must be all of 7 years of age. And he had 2 big luggage bags with him, and he's crying. I says, why are you crying? He says, I'm leaving home. I says, why are you leaving home? Well, he says, there's a new baby in our house. But I said, that should be a time for joy. Everybody will love that. But he says, my daddy's been away at sea for the past 4 years. And he says, everything that happens in my house, I get blamed for it. Well, what about this American man? He came on vacation to Ireland and decided not to go back. He decided he'd go into the chicken rearing business. Little day-old chicks, little yellow fellows. So he went into the farmer's co-op shop down in Limerick, and he said to the man, he says, could I have 1,000 day-old chicks, please? So he bought 1,000. The next day he bought another 1,000. The next day he bought another 1,000. By the end of the week, he had 7,500 day-old chicks. And the fella behind the counter says, I hope you don't mind me asking you, sir. He says, but do you know much about this chicken rearing business? And the American says, he says, well, I hope I'm not planting them too close together. Life is not easy, is it? There's not much work in the country, thank God, as it says, you know. But a friend of mine went for a job with CIE here, that's our national transport, a job as a signalman. And they said to him, well, there's a bit of an IQ test, we have to ask you a few questions before you get this job. He says, this is for safety reasons. He says, suppose there's two trains heading on the one track for a head-on collision, what would you do? Well, he says, I'd get a red flag and I'd wave the flag. He says, there's no flag, what would you do then? He says, I'd get a lamp and I'd light the lamp. And I'd swing the lamp to and fro and to, but mostly to and fro. He says, there's no flag, no lamp. What would you do then? He says, I'd get a flare and I'd light the flare and throw up the flare. He says, there's no flag, no flare, no lamp. What would you do then? He says, I'd go home for my brother-in-law. He says, now why would you go home for your brother-in-law? He says, he never seen a train crash. No, there's a lot of violence in the world, isn't there? There is a lot of violence in the world, yeah? I mention violence, a woman starts to laugh. Well, my brother, he's into that karate. Now, I hate that karate, kung fu, and boxing and all. I'm not able for that. So he says, you're only a small man. He says, I'll teach you the karate. I says, I don't want to know anything about karate, I says. Well, he says, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, I'll teach you the sounds we make when we're doing the karate. He says, that could come in very useful to you. So I was in a bar here in Dublin last week, and this big man, he was about 6'6". He's covered with hair from head to toe. You'd think his mother was after knitting him. And he knocks over my drink. Well, I drew myself up to me full height. And I looked him straight in the knee. And I said to him, show karate, kung fu, what? Well, he killed me dead. He was deaf. But it is a very dangerous sport. Fella had his head chopped off. There's the head lying on the floor. It says to Casey, who's going to tell his wife? Casey says, I'll go round and tell her. So he picks up the head and off round to see Mrs. Patrick Murphy. And he knocks on the door, and just before the door is open to him, he puts the head back here between his legs. The woman come out, he says, are you Mrs. Patrick Murphy? She says, yes. He says, now your husband, he says, is he a very tall man with curly hair? She says he has. Is he about 6'2"? He says, yeah, she says he is, yeah. He says, has he got a slight turn in his eye like that? Yeah. Has he got a nervous twitch in his upper lip like that? She says, that sounds very much like Patrick, all right. So he turned round, he says, would that be him? And the woman says, no, he was a much taller man than that. Oh, dear God. I don't know. Well, my whole life is in turmoil, folks. I'm in desperate trouble. I think my wife is on drugs. Had a phone call this evening just before I came. The phone rang and I picked it up, and this fella says, is that dope gone yet? Well, I'm happy to see you laughing, because you could die any minute. A lot of people go on vacation die, you know. So if you die with a smile on your face, it's a bonus for you, it's a plus. Because when they bring you back home in the old coffin, and they open it up at the airport to let your friends have a look at you, and you're lying there smiling up at them, a few bits of shamrock growing out of your ear, and all your lovely Cavan crystal gifts all around you. and you're in your best clothes. They'll look down at you and they'll say the trip to Ireland did you a world of good. See, my friend's wife died like that, a contrary woman, not a smile ever crossed her lips. They're carrying the coffin down the stairs, it hits off the corner of the wall, the lid flies up off it. She comes back to life, blesses herself, she says, my God, I've had a long sleep. Well, 2 years to the day she died again, and there's 4 men carrying that coffin down and the husband directing them. And they come to that bad corner on the stairs. He says, be careful now, lads, we had a bad accident here 2 years ago. Well, that's the one thing we're all sure of, death, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, true. The Reverend Mother now, Reverend Mother O'Reilly, she is 98. She was on her deathbed, and all the nuns have gathered round her, and they're trying to pass a drop of milk through her lips. She's not liking it. And one younger nun came in and says, don't forget the milk, give her a little drop of Irish whiskey. So they topped up the cup with a good drop of Irish whiskey, and they put it to the Reverend Mother's lips, and begob she liked it. And she slowly lowered it down, and a little smile came on her face, and her eyes lit up a bit, little sparkle in them. And then she begins to fade away again. They all gather close to her. They says, Reverend Mother, have you any last words of advice for us before you depart for your heavenly home? And the Reverend Mother says, she says, for God's sake, don't sell that cow. Well, there was a very serious oil well fire in Saudi Arabia, and they were looking for Red Adair to go to extinguish it. Have you heard of Red Adair? Well, he wasn't available. The only other man that was available was an Irishman called Green O'Flaherty. Green O'Flaherty. He set off from the County Cork in a little blue Ford truck. He bought a new cap and 2 new shovels. It took him 8 months to get there. The fire had got a great grip. And the flames are flying up into the air about 90 feet high. Zoom! And there's about 250,000 little Arabs standing around looking at it. Little brown legs burdened off them. And Green O'Flaherty comes over the sand in a little truck at about 94 miles an hour. And with total disregard for his self-respect, his health or his body, he drives straight into the centre of the flames. Jumps out, beats it with his cap, stamps it, puts it out, and extinguishes it as well. Now, he was getting $1 million for doing this job, don't forget. $1 million. So they're all in awe of this. Such a brave man, drove straight into the fire. So when they're giving him the money, they says, Green O'Flaherty, that was an extraordinary job. Would you like to tell us what are you going to do with all this money when you get back to Ireland? Well, he says, the first thing I'm going to do is get the brakes fixed on that truck. Two Irish fellas were filling the Concorde jet plane with fuel, and a little drop of this fuel fell into Paddy Murphy's mouth. It happened to be open at the time. And he tasted it and he liked it. And he gave some to his friend Casey. Well, Casey only loved it. Well, they took home 87 gallons of it each. They drank it, they went to bed. One of them got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And he's just passing by the mirror. And he notices that his nose was after shooting out. And his arms were gone stuck up behind his back. He's just standing there admiring himself when the telephone rang. And it was his friend Casey. Casey says, is that you, Murphy? Murphy says, it is. Casey says to Murphy, how are you? Murphy says, I'm not a well man. He says, my nose is after shooting out, he says, about 4 feet. And my arms are gone stuck up behind me back. Well, Casey says to him, have you been to the bathroom yet? And Murphy says no. Well, Casey says, for God's sake, don't go. He says, I'm calling you from Tokyo. Oh, you're lovely people. I only wish I had a better act for you. Did you hear about the Irish test tube baby? He was born in a bottle of Guinness. He had a very slender body, but he had a lovely head on him. All over the world, different sets of people laugh at other people. The Americans laugh at the Poles, the Canadians laugh at the Newfoundlanders, the English and the Australians laugh at the Irish. And here in Ireland, we laugh at the whole lot of you. We tend to laugh at people here. They laugh at my brother. My brother's name is Wee-Wah. He was born in an ambulance, you know, Wee-Wah, Wee-Wah, Wee-Wah. He was walking down the street the other day with his head down like this. I said to him, what's the matter with you? He says, I seen a sign back the road, bend for half a mile. He went in to buy himself a pair of shoes and he put the shoes on and the storekeeper says, how are they on you, sir? Well, he says, they're a little bit tight. Well, he says, try them with the tongue out. He said, they're still too tight. He decided to go off to Canada for a short vacation. And he's going out through Dublin airport and he saw a sign, wet floor, so he did. But while he was in Canada, he decided he'd do some bear hunting. So he hired a truck and guns and all, and he's driving up the mountains for about 8 hours, and he came across a big sign that read, bear left, so he came home. He locked his keys in the car and it took him 2 hours with a coat hanger to get his family out. He came into work last Monday. His 2 ears were all bandaged up. I says, what happened to your ears? He says, you're not going to believe this. I says, try me. Well, he says, I was doing a bit of ironing on Sunday, he says. The telephone rang and I picked up the iron. I says, what happened to the other ear? He says, I had to call him back. He loaned a friend of his $10,000 to have plastic surgery done on his face. And he never got the money back, he just couldn't recognize him. He had a heart transplant and he sent a get well card to the donor. I hope these are not getting too clever for you now. Well, I'm only here so late because things are bad in the family situation, you know. Trouble with the wife. They always say in an Irish marriage, never let the sun set on a row, never go to bed without speaking to your husband or your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Make it up, start to talk. Haven't been to bed for 8 months. The row was going on at Christmas and I tried to patch things up. I says to her, what would you like for Christmas, dear? She says, I'd like to look like Barbara Streisand. So I broke her nose. The row was still going on at Easter. I bought her another present. I bought her a waterbed. Waterbed, yeah, waterbed. And her side is after freezing up. She calls my side the Dead Sea. Oh, she didn't like the waterbed. She gave it to her mother. She drank it. I'm on the second marriage now. My second marriage was a mixed marriage, plain and simple. I was plain. But I must explain to the visitors, the people from Mullingar, they'll know this. A mixed marriage here in Ireland is when a Catholic marries a Protestant. In the rest of the world, it's when a man marries a woman. And I married a little Protestant girl, and it has its drawbacks, because when you're having the reception, you have to bring the priest and you have to bring the vicar. I brought the two of them back to the reception at my place. The priest sitting here, vicar there. I said to the priest, will you have a little drink? So he had a drop of Irish whiskey. Then I said to myself, I better ask the vicar. I said to the vicar, would you like a little drink? He said, I'd rather commit adultery. And the priest says, hey, listen, nobody told me there was a choice. You can be unlucky with the girls. I was always unlucky with the girls. Every time I took home a girl when I was a younger man, my mother found some fault with her, had some complaint to make about her. You'll hate a blonde, they're dizzy. You'll hate a blackhead, they're dull. You'll hate a redhead, they're fiery. Then I was in the bar one night and I saw this girl, and she looked exactly like my mother. I said to myself, this is it, I'm right here. Well, I took her home and my father hated her. Not easy. And my wife, she's not a very clever woman, you know. She crashed the car last Friday night. She ran into a tree. She says, it wasn't my fault. I blew the horn. 2 weeks ago, she killed a deer, and he was in the zoo. Friday night, she came home without the car. I says, where's the car? She says, there's water in the carburetor. I said, how do you know that? She says, it's at the bottom of the River Liffey. You know, when she got pregnant for the second time, she thought we had to get married again. Said a lot of the trouble in my marriage was caused by her mother. Mother-in-law. My wife says to me 2 weeks ago, she says, can my mother come down for the weekend? I says, why? She says, she's sick of the attic. But the minute that woman knocks on my door, I know it's her. The canary stops singing. And the mice throw themselves on the traps. The cockroaches hang themselves. This is an ugly woman I'm talking about, folks. She had a face now like a bulldog chewing a wasp. She's the only woman I know could eat a Big Mac through a Venetian blind. Her husband died a younger man. It's not as much as he died as he gave up on her. And I was in his room 3 minutes before he actually passed away. The pallor of death had set upon him. He's gone all yellow and he's beginning to drool and dribble and slobber a little bit. I think he says it twice. Doesn't he get a fancy in his unfortunate head for a piece of apple pie he could spy from his deathbed through to the kitchen? And herself is out there guarding it. The mother-in-law. King Kong in pantyhose. Well, this sick man, he musters up the last breath he had in his dying frame. I think these were the last words he spoke, madam. And he just said, hate to die in your house, madam. He says, could I have a piece of apple pie, please? The mother-in-law says, you cannot. She says, that's for your funeral. But I live in fear of my life of that woman. I don't mind. I live in fear of my life of her. I tell you. This is true. If she's ever staying at my house and I come home with a drink on me and I know that she's in there. Are you with me now? Are you with me? Yeah. Well, you go in first, I'm afraid. And if I know she's in there, I always take my clothes off downstairs and I walk up the stairs backwards. So if she finds me, I say I'm going down for a drink of water. Now, I was very drunk last Tuesday night, I will admit to that, very drunk. Took the clothes off downstairs, ran up the stairs. I was on a bus. Two nuns go to a football game here in Dublin at Croke Park and we're quite enjoying the match, but there's two punk rockers behind them giving them a hard time. And one punk rocker says, I wish I could go to England, he says. There's only 15% Catholics there. And the other punk rocker says, I wish I could go to Belfast, he says. There's only 5% Catholics there. And one of the nuns turned around and said, well, I wish you could go to hell. He says, there's no Catholics there. Husband and wife touring Ireland by car, and they pull up at the gas station to get some gas in. And the fella filling the gas said to him, he said, would you like me to clean the windshield? The wife says, what did he say? He wants to know do I want him to clean the windshield. He said, would you like me to dip the car for oil? The wife says, what did he say? He wants to know do I want him to dip the car for oil. He said, would you like me to put some air in the tyres? The wife says, what did he say? He wants to know that I want him to put some air in the tyre. So the guy doing all the work said to the fellow, he says, by the way, where do you come from? And the man says, I come from the County Cork. Oh, he says, that brings me back to County Cork. He says, 45 years ago, he says, I had the worst love affair ever in my life in the County Cork. The wife says, what did he say? The husband says, he thinks he knows you. But I wouldn't like you to leave this little country of ours thinking that all marriages fall by the wayside like mine. Not at all. That would be untrue. Because my friend, he was 60 years married last Wednesday. And on the day of the anniversary, his wife went into town, into the beauty parlour, to have the face done and the hair done. And after 60 years, your hair would need doing. But while she was away in town, her husband found a box in the bedroom and he opened it. And he was amazed to find in this box 2 eggs and £1,000. So when his wife came home from town, he asked her about it. He says, I'm a bit confused, he says. I found a box in the bedroom, he says, with 2 eggs and £1,000 in it. What is it about? And the wife says, well, I'd prefer not to talk about it. And he says, well, we're 60 years married today. He says, a bit late having secrets from each other. He says, I want to know. Well, she says, you want to know, I'll tell you. She says, pull up a chair, sit down. She says, it's just as simple as this. She says, any time I was unfaithful to you, she says, I put an egg in the box. Well, the tears were coming up in his eyes. He was about to break down and cry, and then he thought, 60 years married, 2 old eggs in a box. He says, forget about it. Throw them out, he says, throw them out. He says, by the way, he says, what about the £1,000? She says, every time I got a dozen eggs, I sold them. Ah, yes. Well, we're very happy to have you here in Ireland. It's lovely to have you. There's a lot of changes taking place in Ireland now. You may not have noticed this because you're just passing through. But we've gone decimalised now with our money, and we're using the metric system of weights and measures and kilometres and metres. And it's very confusing for our older people. Now, my mother, she's 86. Went to the shops last week to buy a few potatoes. Said to the man in the shop, she says, could I have £2 of potatoes, please? He says to her, it's not pounds anymore, missus. He says, it's kilos. Well, she says, give me £2 of kilos. 86 years of age. She went on the pill last Friday. She doesn't want any more grandchildren. She went into the drugstore. She said to the man, I want the pill, and would you mash it up for me? Oh, he says, you don't mash it up, madam. He says, you swallow it with water. She says, mash it up, mash it up, mash it up. So we powdered down the pill, and she sprinkled some on the back of her hand, and she went... He says, missus, you swallow it. She says, at my age, it's all in your head. Oh, there's changes taking place, all right. Even in the Catholic Church, there's changes. If you're getting married now in the Catholic Church, they'll ask you, would you like the new ceremony or the old ceremony? And my friend was getting married, and they asked him that very question. Would you like the new ceremony or the old ceremony, John? I asked, he, sure, I might as well try the new ceremony. So he's going to the church the morning of his wedding, and he lives on a farm, and he has to walk to the church, and he has to cross over some fields, and it's very muddy and mucky, dirty. So he rolls up the ends of his pants to save them getting all dirt. And he arrives at the church. He walks up to the altar, and the priest is just going to start the wedding ceremony when he notices the pants. He says, John, he says, John, the pants, John. Let the pants down. I says, it's all right, Father. Maybe I'll have the old ceremony. Just going through a run of bad luck. I went to the fortune teller today, and she was closed due to unforeseen circumstances. I bought a non-stick fry pan yesterday, and I can't get the label off it. I got up this morning, I went to put my shirt on, the button fell off. I picked up my briefcase, the handle fell off. I was afraid to go to the bathroom. I was afraid my teeth would fall out. But you've been a wonderful audience, ladies and gentlemen. Just before I conclude my part of the evening, I'd like to finish off with a song. It's a song that's very much requested when people come to Ireland. Now, I can assure you it's not requested for me to sing it. My singing is so bad, if Van Gogh had heard it, he'd have cut his other ear off. But it's a lovely Irish song called Galway Bay, and I hope you like it. Sure, maybe someday I'll go back
to Ireland. If it's only when the wife has passed away. For God knows you know the way she used to nag me. For she had a mouth as big as Galway Bay. See her drinking 16 pints of Arthur Guinness, and then her walking home without a sway. If the sea were beer instead of salty water, sure she'd live and die around by Galway Bay. See her sitting at the bar in Paddy Murphy's, and when the barman says it's time to go, sure she doesn't stop to answer him in Gaelic, but speaks a language that the clergy do not know. Now her face was like a pork chop cut in pieces, and her hair was like a rick of last year's hay. Sure, her nose was like the lighthouse out in Claddagh, that would guide the sailors into Galway Bay. On her back she had tattooed the map of Ireland, and when she took her bath on Saturday, when she rubbed the sunlight soap down round by Claddagh, you could see the suds roll into Galway.